Commander Zikth had studied human combat tactics for 3 cycles, analyzing their primitive projectile weapons, their crude armor systems, and their laughably fragmented military structure. The hegemony's invasion of Earth should have been concluded within a single rotation period. Instead, he found himself staring at his tactical display in growing bewilderment as his forces retreated from yet another human settlement. The breaking point had come during what should have been a routine mop-up operation in the ruins of Denver. His shock troops had cornered a small group of human survivors in a collapsed subway tunnel. Among them was a female specimen, designation Sarah Chen, who had sustained what their medical scanners identified as a fractured tibia, a completely debilitating injury by any civilized species standards. Zikth had expected immediate surrender. Instead, he watched through his reconnaissance drones as the injured human did something that defied every military doctrine in the hegemony database. She kept fighting. Not only did Chen continue to engage his troops with her primitive kinetic weapon, but she coordinated the defense of the other humans with tactical precision that would have impressed a hegemony battle coordinator. When her ammunition ran low, she fashioned explosive devices from civilian materials. When those were exhausted, she wielded a metal pipe as a melee weapon, hobbling on her broken leg while directing civilians to safety through maintenance tunnels she somehow knew by memory. But that wasn't the part that made Zikth's combat veterans, warriors who had conquered 17 worlds, begin to exhibit signs of psychological distress. It was what happened when Chen finally collapsed from blood loss and exhaustion. The other humans, instead of fleeing or surrendering, became exponentially more dangerous. They fought with a fury that his xenopsychologists had no classification for. A 12-year-old human child threw himself at a hegemony battle mech with nothing but an improvised incendiary device, screaming something the translators rendered as "for Sarah." An elderly male, well past his species' prime fighting age, somehow managed to disable 2 squads using nothing but knowledge of the tunnel system and strategically placed debris. The reports flooding in from across the planet told similar stories. Humans with severed limbs crawling toward hegemony positions with grenades clutched in their remaining hands. Pilots with catastrophic injuries flying damaged aircraft into hegemony carriers in what could only be described as deliberate collision attacks. Medical personnel rushing into active firefights to retrieve wounded comrades, often sustaining fatal injuries in the process. Zikth's tactical AI had run the probability calculations 17 times. The mathematics were impossible. Injured humans should retreat, seek medical attention, preserve their biological functions for future reproduction opportunities. This was the logical response observed in every sapient species the hegemony had encountered. Humans, apparently, had never read the manual. The breaking point came when Zikth received reports that human forces were actually becoming more effective as they sustained casualties. Wounded humans were being used as forward observers, their impaired mobility compensated for by their ability to remain in concealed positions while directing fire missions. Soldiers with broken bones were serving as ammunition runners, using their knowledge of pain tolerance to navigate through areas that would incapacitate other species. Most disturbing of all were the psychological profiles his analysts were generating. Injured humans weren't just continuing to fight, they were inspiring their uninjured comrades to fight harder. The sight of Chen dragging herself across broken concrete while providing covering fire had been broadcast across human communication networks, somehow increasing rather than decreasing their species' will to resist. Zikth's field commanders were requesting immediate psychiatric evaluation. 3 of his battalion leaders had suffered complete neural cascades after witnessing human medics performing surgical procedures on conscious patients who continued to operate communication equipment and coordinate defensive positions throughout the process. The final straw came when intelligence reported that humans had begun deliberately injuring themselves in non-critical ways to gain tactical advantages, using blood loss to slip through barriers, breaking fingers to escape restraints, accepting minor wounds to maintain positioning in firefights. That evening, Zicht transmitted the recall order to the Hegemony High Command. In his official report, he wrote, "Species demonstrates fundamental incompatibility with standard conquest protocols. Recommend immediate reclassification to avoid contact status." Privately, he added a personal note that would circulate among hegemony commanders for generations. "They don't fight like they're trying to win. They fight like they're already dead. How do you defeat an enemy who treats survival as optional?" The evacuation began at dawn.